Alright, I'll play the monkey game just for you guys. After so many requests from you, my beautiful army of the glaze, I decided to finally play Donkey Kong Country for the SNES for the very first time. Welcome back to the Regress series, where I play old games, half of which I've never even heard of, and before all of you retro gaming vets in the comments start throwing bananas at me, yes, I know. First off, I have definitely heard of Donkey Kong Country, and as a matter of fact, I actually even remember playing it a couple times for like 10 minutes at my childhood neighbor's house. I hope you're doing well, Candace. But besides that, I've never even played a single Donkey Kong game. I know, but hey, I was too busy playing Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time, and besides that, I've always just been more of a Mario guy than a Donkey Kong guy, so I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I knew what it was, obviously. I mean, everybody knows what Donkey Kong is. I even had Donkey Kong 64, but I never played it. I had seen the box art 1,000 times. I've heard people constantly praise the soundtrack, in particular an apparent underwater theme that is just so good. It is. And every time I asked you guys what games you want me to play, Donkey Kong Country always popped up. Now, if I haven't gotten your game request yet, fear not, my beautiful guardian, because I have about 4,000 requests. Basically every retro game ever made to go still, so we'll get there. You just gotta stick with me. But for today, I'm glad you joined me for my very first playthrough of Donkey Kong Country. Hey there, all you beautiful guardians of the glaze. Welcome back to the Milky Donut. If you're new here, this is the Milky Donut. We do all things video games, movies, and pop culture. And if you're not new here, are you single? Because I would hope not with as good as you look. Now, before we begin our little retro time-traveling journey, as always, I should mention that I do have a goal of reaching 10,000 subscribers as quickly as I can. So if you enjoyed the video, if you could go ahead and like the video, leave the glaziest of comments, hype it if you can, and subscribe, it would help me out a ton. Shout out to the current subscriber of the week, Mr. Uncle Bob Boomer Games, because we all need a fun uncle, right? But with all of that nonsense out of the way, let's jump back into our video game time travel machine and play some old games just to see how much we've gained, or maybe how much we've lost in the world of video games. To me, Donkey Kong always looked like just another old platformer. Well, as you might be aware by now, I'm an idiot. I was very wrong. First off, after playing Battletoads, Super Metroid, and a lot more difficult games, this was a fantastic little break where I could just sit back, relax, and play the game. I'm gonna start this video off with something that I've said in almost every single video in this series so far: the visuals and how good this game still looks. I know it might feel like I'm just repeating the same things over and over again, but I have to call it how I see it. Donkey Kong Country yet again looks phenomenal, and even more so than I expected. I've developed this strange obsession with how these games look because they just look like, brace yourselves, this is gonna sound stupid, video games. The art design and the music, which we'll get into shortly, the character models, the backgrounds, it's such a delightful sight for eyes that have spent most of their teenage and adult life up to this point playing games that prioritize realism and cinematics, even if it's at the expense of gameplay. The game has a visual style that still feels extremely unique today. Back in 1994, most console games were still using traditional pixel art sprites, which I do love, but Rare used pre-rendered 3D models that made Donkey Kong Country look like it was almost from an entirely different console. I'm not even kidding. When I booted this game up and started playing it, I thought I downloaded the wrong game. I was like, this doesn't look like an SNES game, but it was. It's just so full of character and personality. Again, I know I say that a lot in this series. I'm genuinely not trying to come off as repetitive, but I can't help it if it's true. Donkey Kong Country, to literally no one's surprise, feels impressive even today, because you know that's real hard to do. But the pre-rendered graphics have an oddly timeless look to them, where everything almost feels like stop motion animation or clay models brought to life. It has a style that instantly stands out from every other game that I've played so far on the SNES. And it's just so crazy to me, man, because I'm playing this having a good old time, and then I remember that this game came out in 1994, and my brain does a little jump start for a second because I wasn't even born yet. What are we doing? It's so good. I can only imagine being a kid back then, going from something like the Atari or even NES games to this. This probably felt like new technology from the future. I mean, I'm just Milky and I literally don't know anything, but I can only imagine that Rare absolutely left its mark on the entire industry at the time with this game. Even now, the jungle environments, the caves, the sunsets and the backgrounds, the rain effects, all of it still creates an atmosphere that just feels so comfy. And speaking of atmosphere, you guys know me and my atmosphere, so I have to talk about the soundtrack because come on, what is this, bro? I was literally sitting in my little beanbag chair with my Twizzlers and my strawberry cream soda Dr. Pepper, fire by the way, just jamming to the absolute cookfest of a soundtrack we are gifted with here. Why is the monkey game making me emotional? Why do I want to live wherever this game takes place? it took me right back to being a tiny little milk dud. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I had heard people talk about the music, in particular the apparent glaze fest that is the aquatic ambience this game delivers. Let me tell you something. Come close. Yeah, a little closer. Don't be scared. It's just milky. They cooked here. 9 times out of 10, I actually don't even like water levels in games. They better be designed exceptionally well if your boy isn't going to complain, but the underwater levels here feel peaceful yet lonely, yet relaxing and even slightly unsettling at times, all at the same time. Hey David, so we're making a platforming game about a couple of monkeys, so if you could just give us some music for it, it's not that serious. Well, this man's last name isn't Wise for no reason. My guy said ignite and the entire studio caught on fire. I was supposed to upload this video early yesterday morning, but I'm late, and you know why? Because I was sitting here for 3 hours getting lost in my own spiritual awakening listening to this music. If you're an OG of the channel, I've not only mentioned that Ocarina of Time is my favorite game of all time, but it's the first game that I ever had an emotional connection to, and I played it with my grandpa who has since passed. He was my best friend and my gaming partner, and something about this music took me right back to eating kettle chips and drinking a cold Pepsi out of a red Solo cup at my grandparents' house with my grandpa right by my side. And that's a feeling that should not be understated. The cave music feels mysterious and the jungle themes are bombastic and energetic without becoming too repetitive or annoying. That's another thing that I started noticing while playing Donkey Kong Country. Older games had this incredible ability to create memorable moods and sentimental feelings without needing giant cinematic cutscenes, extensive dialogue, or hyper-realism. If I wanted that, I would just go outside and talk to my neighbors, and that sounds terrible. Because real life sucks, and modern games sometimes try a little too hard to force emotion onto the player through the previously mentioned avenues. While my experience with the older games that I've played so far, including Donkey Kong Country, has made me realize that they mostly put music, lighting, and straight gameplay at the forefront, effectively creating natural reactions, emotions, and feelings. Sometimes something even as simple as the silhouette of trees in the background or the sound of the rain hitting the platforms that I was jumping across is enough to completely pull me into its world. One thing I wasn't surprised by at all going into Donkey Kong Country is the controls, and if you've watched any of my other videos in this series, you know why. But something I didn't expect was just how differently the gameplay is compared to other older platformers that I've been playing. Donkey Kong Country doesn't go for the ultra light, frictionless movement that you get in something like Mario. And with that being said, I very naively went into this with the preconceived notion that it would be similar to that. Instead, the game is built entirely around momentum. Donkey Kong and Diddy, not that one, feel grounded. They accelerate into movement instead of instantly snapping to full speed, and that slight heaviness is exactly what gives the platforming so much personality and a sense of satisfaction. During my research for this video, which I did as always, I noticed that a lot of people compare the movement to classic Sonic games, which I've also never played. But having momentum-based physics where you have to learn how to build and maintain speed, rather than expecting immediate precision, was a very nice pleasant surprise and switch up. At first, as somebody who's only played a couple of platformers, I thought the controls felt a bit slippery, but after a couple of levels, I realized that this was something the game was doing very intentionally. Every jump has weight to it. Every roll carries forward momentum. You can't just stop on a dime and instantly correct every mistake the way many platformers allow you to do. The game commits you to a certain type of movement, which means your decisions matter. And once you understand that, the controls become incredibly satisfying because the game starts rewarding rhythm and confidence instead of hesitation. And what really makes the controls work is how the entire game is designed around them. A lot of modern games feel like the story and visuals were made first, and then they said, okay great, now we'll just base the controls and mechanics around that. Well here, as I said, the levels aren't built for twitchy last second adjustments. They're built around the flow, baby. Rolling through enemies, chaining jumps together, bouncing off of kremlings, all while maintaining speed, launching through barrel cannons, all of which feels very interconnected and streamlined. I really liked shooting from barrel to barrel. It's so simple but so fun and addictive. Even the difference between Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong matters mechanically speaking. Donkey Kong, being the larger of the two, feels heavier and stronger, while Diddy Kong feels quicker and more agile, which gives the game subtle variety without overcomplicating anything or shifting the momentum in a negative way. The animal buddies also ended up being one of my favorite parts of the game. Steamrolling enemies while riding Rambi felt amazing, and Enguarde completely changes the underwater gameplay, adding even more variety. Every new mechanic the game introduces feels meaningful, and the pacing stays consistent throughout the entire experience. The game never sits still for too long before throwing some new idea or challenge at you. Even the bosses, while mechanically simple for the most part, are still great because of how much personality they have. And King K. Rool as the final boss was not only fun, but as I mentioned in my last video about Ridley and how I only knew him from Super Smash Bros. Brawl, I also only knew King K. Rool from Smash. So again, it was really cool to see him in the context of his own territory. There was something about his animations and the fake out ending that still felt incredibly charming and clever even over 30 years later. Which is wild because I'll say it again, this game might be the best looking SNES game that I've played so far. Like when I say it actually blew me away, I'm not joking. Not to mention, if I played this as a kid, the fake credit sequence probably would have caused permanent trust issues for the rest of my life. But by the end of the game, I realized that Donkey Kong Country has aged far better than even I expected it to, and by this point in the series, I have some pretty high expectations. Even after being shocked by the other old games that I've been playing, the fact that there's games consistently surprising me in so many different ways makes me ecstatic to play more. I came into it thinking that I was going to play a good game, but maybe experience some aspects that felt a bit primitive. Instead, I ended up playing one of the most atmospheric, mechanically satisfying, and surprisingly intense at times platformers that I've experienced so far in this series, with some of the best music I've ever heard in a game. No bloated open world, no battle passes, no crafting systems, no 15-minute cutscenes every time somebody wants to tell me something, just monkeys, barrels, and incredible music, all tied together with some of the best and tightest platforming designs of its era. Yet again, I had an absolute blast with Donkey Kong Country, and I completely understand why it's beloved by so many people, including myself now. But do you prefer old games or new games? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to see more of this, feel free to comment what you'd like to see next. And of course, don't forget to like, hype, comment, and subscribe to become a guardian of the glaze, and I'll see you next time on the Milky Donut.